Thank you for joining the Alliance Goal Digger podcast. We're so glad you're here. Today, you get to hear from a patient and their perspective. I'm so excited to introduce my friend and fellow advocate for So Everybody Can Move, Lynda Fisher. Lynda had a bike ride that changed her life forever, leading to a series of events that were heartbreaking and led to multiple layers of adversity and challenges. Through it all, she saw God's faithfulness and the value of community. Lynda shares her story with us here today and will inspire you to continue to press forward even amidst pain and uncertainty. Lynda is a mother to 3 sons, 1 daughter, and has 2 beautiful grandsons. I know that you're going to love to hear from Lynda and will be inspired. Lynda, thank you so much for joining the Alliance Goal Digger podcast. I know you are not an Alliance patient, but a patient advocate. I would love to let the audience know how we know each other. And we met through So Everybody Can Move here in Georgia. And I knew immediately we were going to be friends because of your authenticity. You shared your story in such a powerful way on one of our national calls, and I wanted to become your friend instantly. Because I know your story and I know how much it encouraged those on the call that day, but throughout our state, I wanted you to share with our audience. If you wouldn't mind kind of bringing us up to speed how you joined the Limb Loss Community Club. I know it's not everybody's favorite club to be a part of, but in my experience, the people in this club are sincerely some of the best people I've ever met.
Well, thank you, Rachel. I appreciate this opportunity. I appreciate you doing this podcast. I think it's going to be a wonderful resource for those who are in this club. So I look forward to seeing what it does throughout the years to come. I am from Tifton, Georgia, and other than college, I lived there my entire life. I'm the mom of 3 boys and 1 girl, Sophia, and my little girl came as the caboose, and she was the perfect finish to our family. She was just the sassy delight in our life. And because of her birth order, she could hang with her older brothers and their friends, and she'd shimmy up the tree with the best of them, many times in a dress and with her cute little red pigtails. And we've always been a very active family. We work around the farm together. We ran races together, and all of my children played sports in school. And the summer before Sophia's senior year in 2018, she and I were training for a sprint triathlon, and it was bike day training. And so we headed out early one Saturday morning and headed north to a friend's house to park so we could bike safely. And of course, she was 18, so she was complaining, as many teenage daughters do. And yes. I just purchased the biking shorts for her. And she goes, "Oh, these are so uncomfortable." And I said, "Well, you will appreciate them about 10 miles in." And so we went to an intersection, looked both ways, nothing was coming, and we turned left on that road. And the next memory I have is of me kneeling over her lifeless body, trying to breathe life into her again. And I found out later that we were struck by a full-size truck going over 60 miles an hour. And I was injured head to toe, and she passed away. So as you can imagine, it was absolutely the worst day of my life, which led to the worst season of my life. And so for the next 3.5 years, I had multiple surgeries trying to fix my left ankle, which was badly damaged in the accident. And after a year of this journey, my husband of 30 years removed himself completely from my life and filed for divorce. And it was just an extremely hard and trying time. I'd lost my one and only daughter, and my marriage was now over, and all my boys were out of college or were in college, and they were out of the house. So I was alone and in chronic pain, and I could only walk with some sort of help, like crutches or a scooter. My talus bone was fractured, and ultimately it collapsed, which led me to seek out different opinions for healing or removing it. My boys were all married during these 3.5 years, which were the bright spots to help me keep going during this time. And since they were spread out all over, some are in the military, after I met with more doctors, we finally all got to FaceTime, and we laid out everything in a good spreadsheet and put the pros and the cons. Do we do more surgeries? Do we have an amputation? And at my age, middle-aged, and talking extensively, we opted for an amputation. And I've not regretted 1 minute of that decision. So after several months of healing, some setbacks and infections, I brought my first prosthetic home 4 years to the day after we buried Sophia. And I started physical therapy the very next day. Within 2 times at physical therapy, I was walking unassisted. Within 2 months, I was running on an Alter-G treadmill. At 3 months, I was hiking mountains in North Carolina. And in 5.5 months, I was skiing down mountains in Park City. So I was living life again and returning to the person I was prior to the accident. And I've since run 2 5Ks, and I've just remained as active as possible. Little did I know that this healing of my body would lead to the healing of my heart and my soul. And, we're just uniquely created with our body, soul, and mind, and they're just so intertwined. So getting my physical body back and headed in the right direction allowed me to do the other healing that I desperately so needed. And now I'm 3 years out from my amputation and settling into life. I work as an alumni director at a college, and I travel to see my 2 new grandsons as often as I can. And so that is where I am today.
Lynda, there were so many good nuggets that you shared in your introduction. The one that is standing out to me is the we made the decision. Tell me more about how you brought your family into that decision.
Well, I knew that I would need my boys so much, and they have been amazing. Even in their grief, they lost their sister. They lost the mother they knew. They lost their family unit. So even in their grief, they were wonderful men of God and stood and took care of me in so many ways. And so I knew it was a joint decision. And it was kind of funny. They were all over the board. Daniel, my middle son, if you have a middle child, you can relate to this.
I'm laughing because I do have a middle son.
Yes, my middle son from the beginning was like, Mama, cut it off. But honestly, I just think he wanted me to be a pirate at Halloween.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I could see a middle son wanting the pirate thing.
And he's a redhead too, so he's got a lot of character. And my youngest son's like, Mom, you've done everything you can. They can't promise anything. It's time. And my oldest son, he's like, are we sure we can't go back? Let's make sure we've done everything. And afterwards I called him back. I said, you seem a little hesitant. And he said, Mom, I just wanted to make sure that you were sure. He said, I was going to play devil's advocate regardless of what your decision was. So I think that's, as a firstborn, that's what they're going to do. And so I loved all their perspectives on this. And so we were able to make that decision together.
I think that's such a powerful piece for our audience to think about, is that you don't make a decision in a vacuum. Your life is connected to other people, and you clearly did that with your boys at the time. I'm kind of thinking about your spreadsheet, though. What did you put on the spreadsheet? I really got to know.
Yeah, well, you put quality of life is obviously some of it. My thing was, would I ever get married again? What would someone want to marry an amputee? Which seems kind of, maybe shallow at that point, but it wasn't. It was like, I'm on a scooter. This is not living to me, So I'm like, I am way more active now than I ever was then. And so I'm just so thrilled with what being an amputee has given me back in life.
It's so funny. I keep having these conversations with patients in our office, as well as some of our advocacy friends, and this whole idea of limb salvage. And we keep saying, to what extent? What are we trying to save for? And I wanted to see if you had a perspective on that, seeing that you have now this lived experience that you did all of these surgeries. What would you say you wish you knew in the middle of that?
Well, because of the trauma I had in the accident and the grief with just losing my daughter, I was not able at that point in time to look at the pros and cons of every surgery I had. It was just kind of, the doctor said, you should have this. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. It just seemed like the right thing to do. I think the timing, I needed that time, those 3.5 years. A lot of people have asked, do you wish you did it sooner? I don't think I was in the right headspace. I don't think that I was like, okay, I'm done with this. I had to get to a point where I knew this is not the life I wanted to lead. And so I needed that time to get my head back to normal and get my emotions in check and to really look at things from a very logical standpoint.
That's a good piece of advice. I think hindsight is always 2020. People ask, hey, if you knew then what you knew now, what would you do? But no one does.
But you don't. That's
you
right.
just don't.
And I think in any of this process, you've just got to make the decision with the information you have and look forward, not backwards.
Yeah, no, I think that's such a valid point. I was wondering in that season, were there any unexpected influences or things that kind of you feel happened in timelines or different settings that you think, I'm so glad I had that conversation? Or even if you're thinking about your kids, friends, people that in that season you talk about the hardest season of your life, what an unexpected blessing or insight you have now because you walked in that season.
Mm-hmm. I will just say my community is an amazing community. I'm from Tifton, small town. We're small enough where when a tragic like that happens, everyone knows about it, but we're large enough, we're not in everybody's business day to day. But they really rallied around me, and the local lumberyard donated wood, the Boy Scouts made me a ramp, a medical supply place just dropped off everything I could imagine that I needed at my front door. Didn't apply anything to insurance. They just dropped it off as a gift to me. Food for months and months on end.
We Southerners do love through food.
We do love. And that's a good way to love. It is a wonderful. And I was very well loved. My family was very well loved. And I think the value of community is what I really gained out of this. I knew how wonderful the town was I lived in, but just how wonderful to be on the receiving end and not the giving end of that was absolutely amazing. And I could not have survived literally without them. They just showed up time after time. Again, even in this long season of life, not just a one-time deal, they showed up over and over again.
That's so beautiful. I think that's the part that where we don't make a decision in a vacuum. We also don't live in a world all by ourselves. So give some advice right now to a community that might have a loved member of the community, or even maybe not so loved, because sometimes you might not be everybody's favorite. What can a community do to help someone who's walked through something similar to your situation?
Yes, it to me is so important to just do things like, I'm going to bring supper Tuesday or Thursday. Don't say, can I bring supper? Just say, I'm going to bring it. Yeah. And then you fill in the blank. And I think that is so important. And I usually share that with caretakers as well to those. Don't ask them, can you fix them breakfast? Just say, would you like eggs or a bagel? And so I think the reason of that is, I know I have felt this way. When they ask, can I make you breakfast? I felt like a burden. And so many times when you're in these situations, you feel like you're a burden to other people. So you need the conversation to lend itself that I'm going to fix you breakfast regardless. So what do you want to eat? So that to me is much more comforting and makes me feel less of that burden on other people.
No, I think that's great advice. I wanted to kind of talk about, if you can remember, leading up to the surgery, how are you feeling? What were the main, I know you used your spreadsheet, your sons for the decision grid, but in our space, something that we constantly talk about is losing a limb is similar to losing a loved one. You've done both. Can you talk about how you prepared for this decision mentally, physically? Maybe you didn't. Maybe you're just like, get me out of here. I'm ready to go.
Yeah. Actually, once I made the decision, I felt so much better. Just knowing that there was a better life out there for me, I felt so much better. In fact, a coworker called me on the phone and she's like, wow, you sound great. And I think it was just, I had that hope that life was going to get better. It hadn't yet, but I just had the hope of something to come. But I will say something that I did that was very good for me, very therapeutic. I love to write. I have a blog. I love to write. And so I sat down and I just wrote a thank you to my foot. And I know it sounds odd and bizarre, but it was kind of like, thank you for all you've done for me. And for me, we've run a lot of races together. I've run a marathon with it. I was able to dance with all three of my boys at their weddings. And I just said, thank you for all you've done for me. And just wrote like an ode to my foot and just wrote it out and cried and just kind of said goodbye. And for me, that was just very therapeutic to say that, because it has served me well, but it was at the end of what it could do for me. So I had to let it go.
Yeah. I don't want to sound callous, but it sounds like you had a funeral.
Yes. Yeah. It was in part like a funeral, just saying goodbye, that I was thankful for it. And we just had to let it go.
No, I think that's really good advice. And I thought one of the things you mentioned previously is that you needed time to get there. What were some of the things during that time that kind of helped you, okay, this is no longer working? Were there certain milestones, different events, chronic pain? What were the main reasons you kept thinking, maybe I need to do this?
I really think it was the chronic pain that was the factor that got me there. 24/7 pain since the accident day. It was absolutely awful. And if someone had said, Lynda, you're going to be in pain for 4 years and it's going to end, I'm like, I can do 4 years. If you give me an end date, I'll be fine with that. But with no end date in sight, I knew I had to schedule that end date because it wasn't coming. And so knowing this had to end, I could not live the rest of my life in this kind of pain. And so it was just so important that I made that decision to have something better in the future for me.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Did you have any fears? I mean, I know you had the funeral. I know you felt good about it, but I be honest.
And I hate to say this, but I really, the biggest fear was they were going to cut off the wrong foot. I feel that's valid. I think that's valid. And I was very concerned because I'm like, if I'm left with this crappy foot, I'm going to be really in trouble. Because my right side had been working extra hard, so I like to say that I've got a, 4-year older right leg than I do left leg, because this one kind of took vacation for a while. Right. And my other one was working overtime. But when I went back into surgery and then they wrapped my right leg in the blood pressure, whatever thing, to keep, I knew that I was safe. They were writing all over it. They're not going to cut off the wrong one, but I did have that fear. I did. That was my fear at the time.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I don't think I would have put that on the list, but I feel like that's a good one to, hey, make sure they cut off the right one.
That's right.
Where were your boys? What were they doing when you were preparing for surgery?
They were scattered because they are in the military, and so most of them are attached to their spouse in the military. And so they had said they would all come home before the amputation. I'm like, listen, that's a duplication of services. I'm all about being efficient. If you got a good spreadsheet, you got to make sure you do things correctly. And so I'm like, I'm going to need you all at this time. So my oldest came to my amputation and he's my firstborn. So I need him there to make the decisions.
Dot the I's, cross the
T's.
T's.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Look we all have firstborns.
Yes,
we
firstborns
know which one to hire.
Absolutely. And then my other two, Matthew came when I made it back. I had my amputation actually in Nashville, Tennessee. And then when I got back to home 2 weeks later, my youngest son came and picked me up, and we went to the beach with my family. He stayed with me for a while. And then my other son came, and they were just all tag teaming and taking care of me, because at this point they're all married, they all have jobs, and so they all have their lives as well. But they all pitched in along with other people filling in the blanks. My sister and her husband cared for me at the amputation where I had that in Nashville, Tennessee. So just a lot of people filling in the gap.
So now that we know where the amputation took place, let's talk about interviewing doctors who will be willing to amputate someone, because that's kind of an unspoken rule. Doctors are not lining up to cut people's legs off.
No, they're really not. No. In fact, that was not my intent, but that was in my list of questions to ask him. But I remember going to see this doctor, and he's a foot doctor in Nashville, and wonderful. And he walked in the room after doing a standing MRI and seeing the results. And his first words were, well, there are no good options. And I said, well, can you cut it off? And he goes, well, I'm glad you'll let me discuss that, because a lot of people won't, but that is a good option. And so then we went into everything. And then he sent me to another doctor at Duke. And so I had the same conversations. Is it fixable? What surgeries would you do? There are other surgeries for what an issue I had, but with my age, it wasn't tried and true. I just didn't want to go year after year with more and more surgeries. I needed to stop the madness, basically, and get on with my life.
No, that makes total sense. So when you made this appointment in Nashville, talk to our listeners. How did you advocate for yourself to know that you couldn't do this where you are currently living, the other places that you've received surgery? What led you to go outside of your network, essentially?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I used my sister who lived up there. She knew of this good group of doctors. And so I utilized that. So I think just using the resources you have, the people that you have, ask your doctor if they're worth their salt. They will offer a second opinion with somebody else, and go to second. I went to second. I went to third. But I also had doctors in my town. I'm just, a rural town, but I talked to different doctors there. They weren't my doctors. They were just my friends. And then my friends of friends or acquaintances of friends. And so I talked to multiple doctors. Just, what do you think? Here's my story. What would you do? And I think everyone said amputation's the best way for you to go. And it absolutely was.
Yeah, no, I think that's powerful that you were willing to share the pain you were in. I don't know if you could speak to the patient or the family that might just be a little embarrassed that they are not sure what to do. They've salvaged their leg. They're unhappy with the results. They kind of want to get going with a conversation. What would you recommend they start the first, 5 steps that they need to take?
Mm-hmm. I think first, you just have to realize that no one's going to advocate like you are for yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's the hardest thing. You've got to just tell yourself you are worth advocating for. And you're going to go have to find them. You're going to have to do some research. Now, you may have a good friend that can do some research for you, find a good doctor for you. And if there's a lot of emotion tied to it, that's the thing about amputations. There's a story behind every one, whether it's sickness, whether it's trauma, whatever it might be, there is a story behind that. And so you have to kind of deal with those demons as well. And so maybe you need a friend to do some deep digging for you, but you've got to make sure that you go and find a doctor, another doctor, a third doctor, and find the right thing. And if you're not satisfied, don't settle. Do not settle. Wait until you feel good about the decisions laid before you.
That's good advice. I wanted to ask, switching, because the physician is the one who does the amputation, but the prosthetist, which that sounds such like a naughty word when you say it,
yes,
but it's not. It's just as you know, Jason is my favorite prosthetist. But where did you find your prosthetist, and what clinic, and how did you navigate that whole space?
Well, and actually, when I was looking at having an amputation, you have to realize I knew not one amputee, not one.
Right.
And so, not a great uncle, nobody. I had no idea what this life looked like. I just knew it had to be better than what I was. So through a mutual friend, there was an amputee that introduced himself to me and said who he used. And so it's ProCare, Autobot Care. And so I went up to their main office before my amputation and met with their team, and they were absolutely amazing. And so I actually go to one of their clinics, and I've been using them. Andrew's my prosthetist, or as he says, I work with amputees. So I drive 2.5 hours to see him, and he has become not only a great clinician, but he's also a great friend. And they just become family. And so I'm so thankful for him and for the care that I receive at that office.
No, that's how we want our patients to feel as well. And that's one thing we share with Autobot Care and ProCare, that we care so much about our patients, and we have loved seeing other patients have success. That's the beauty of prosthetics and orthotics in Georgia. It's like Baskin Robbins. There's a flavor for everybody. And we are so glad you have your flavor. Tell me, what are some of the first questions, though, you asked Andrew? Or how did you get to know that, like, he's going to be your person?
Well, he was just assigned to me, but we really hit it off from the get-go. It was actually, I'm trying to think of the years, but we had a spike in COVID again. So I had to go, I just remember us all being in masks. And so we met to get molded for my first prosthetic. And so that took a lot. But Andrew is just so patient with me. He texts me back when I text him when I freak out. The very first time I had a huge blood blister, I'm just like freaking out, like oh no, what do I do? Because everything first and new is just scary. And so having someone that he can kind of go, okay, take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. We're just going to have to let you heal, and we'll work on it next week. And so he's just been very gracious to let me learn the process as well.
So I hear a teachable spirit.
Yes.
Does that mean you're a part of support groups, or how do you connect with other amputees, or what are you doing now to teach? Because I know you love to teach.
Yes, I do. But I'll tell you one story that's my favorite, actually. I was at Buc-ee's heading home from meeting with Andrew, and also I always wear shorts or whatever so he can, see my prosthetic easily. And so I was in line in the women's bathroom, and this lady starts a conversation, and she says, "Ma'am, you look so happy. I have a niece who is struggling and trying to decide about having an amputation. She lives in Nebraska. Would you talk to her?"
Yep.
And so just through that, Liz and I have connected. She has since had an amputation. She's doing well. And so it's amazing how we just find each other, whether it's the Buc-ee's bathroom or through So Everybody Can Move. You just find the little niche. If you told me 5 years ago I'd have an Instagram and that I'd follow amputees and they would follow me, I'd say you're crazy. But here we are. So life kind of, gives us a wide pitch sometimes, but you just go with it. But I also like to speak, and so I'm able to share my story at different events and through women's groups. And so I just share the faithfulness of God and get to share with others this journey, that it's been an extremely hard one, but the value of community and just standing strong in the beliefs that I have given me the strength to make it day by day.
I just love your heart for people. You've always cared so deeply. That's why I feel like the audience doesn't know there's a third person. Lane Johnson is our producer over there, and she's looking. I'm like, if you were there at that call, you would know immediately. I was like, I got to be friends with Lynda. I wondered if you have any life hacks. I mean, women who use prosthetic devices, and then also in general, any amputee, things that they wish. I mean, you kind of probably learned the hard way because you didn't really have a lot of people in your life kind of helping you navigate this. Give a 101 of someone's going to be amputated, they're going to go home. What are some things you learned the hard way that can make it easy for someone else?
For me, I was working so long on a scooter prior to my amputation. So I had gotten stronger on my my right leg, my right hip. But I think the setup that I have at home in my spare sink in my bathroom, just having all my stuff organized in drawers, and it really makes things a lot easier. I actually put in some cabinets for my closet, and so I now have a leg cabinet, and I put all my legs. And when the cabinet maker came over, I said, "This is probably the only time you've ever built a leg cabinet for someone." He goes, "You are indeed correct." So I have actually a leg cabinet with all my legs in there and my supplies in there as well. So just staying organized, just like anything else. It takes more time. It is more stuff. You have to think about a lot more when you pack. Andrew, again, was fabulous. When I went overseas less than a year into my amputation, I went overseas on a trip, and I remember texting him when I was packing. I'm like, I've got this. What else do I need? And so he kind of walked me through, made sure I had everything. So it is a learning curve for sure, but you kind of find out what you need in the journey.
Yeah, one of the reasons I knew I could ask her this question, when we went to go advocate for our bill, she brought 3 legs, and I took them and thought I could fit them back in her bag, and I couldn't. I had no idea how to get it back all in the bag. And I was like, Lynda, how did you get this in this bag? This is crazy. But she did. It was like Tetris. It was wild.
And I have been at TJ Maxx, taken off my leg, fit the leg in the bag before they had to purchase the bag. I know they're like, what is she doing? But, you have to do what you have to do. Don't be embarrassed. This is who you are. It doesn't define you, make you a worse person, make you a better person. It is who you are. And so sometimes you just have to own that. So I've been TJ Maxx, Home Goods, taking my leg off, seeing if it'll fit in the bag, and then slip it back on and go up and purchase it.
That's awesome. I love that. So I love heels. You love heels. Yes. We talk heels. Talk to our ladies. How did you make the decision that you wanted to continue to wear heels, and how did you get it done?
Yes. So I do love to wear heels. A good wedge, nobody can beat it.
Yep.
So in my job too, I do a lot of events and galas and stuff. And so I have to dress up, and I, will wear suits, skirts. And so I talked with Andrew, and so there is a leg that has an adjustable heel. And so I can push a little button and move the toe up and down to fit in the right heel. It'll go up to 2.5 inches. And so that way I can wear heels in my skin color. That's probably the hardest thing. And all the women in the office, Andrew's like, I'm tapping out. But all the women in the office are like, okay, that one looks better. And like my summer color. And, so you go with the summer leg or the winter color. So,
yeah.
But just trying to decide those factors. It obviously doesn't look perfect, but I've had people a couple of times, because of the suction and it holding on at the knee, they're like, oh, do you have knee issues? But they never even notice that the leg is not my leg,
Yeah.
So it really looks great, and no one can really tell.
Well, I thought she looked awesome at the Capitol. I noticed it, and her and I were click-clacking around, going to all the senators and representatives. Okay, I wanted to transition a little bit, and I wanted to talk about how you have cultivated this support, that you continue to go into places and add value. What is it that you see on the horizon for support? Like, well, how can those who are interested in, I've overcome something, now I want to go and add value somewhere else. What have you done to set yourself up for that?
Well, I think finding those, we all have trials. We all have struggles that we go through in this life. None of us are immune to that. And our stories are important to those people that share that. So whether it is at church, whether it is at your workplace, we need to share our story. In fact, after my accident, I said, well, when my ankle heals, I'm going to get a tattoo with Sophia's name on it so I can always share my story. And that'll be the catalyst to do that. And little did I know that now I would just have a prosthetic that would bridge that.
A permanent tattoo.
A permanent tattoo that's removable. Yes.
Right.
So, I even going through the airport, I always show my prosthetic. It's just easier to get through security too, for one. But it just opens the door for conversation. And usually I bring up either the prosthetic, or I'll make a joke about it. For me, I try to keep it light so that other people don't feel uncomfortable. So it's very important for me to kind of break that ice, because they may think, oh, is she okay with talking about that? And I am at any point in time.
Yeah, another reason I enjoy chatting with you. I wanted to move to more reflections and advice and things, because you have the opportunity to have had time to heal and to think back. But if you could imagine someone who is in the middle of a similar situation that you once were in, what would you have wanted to hear?
Just take one decision at a time. It is so overwhelming if you look at the big thing that's going to come. You're like, what is life going to look like in 5 years? What is life going to look like in 10 years? Just take one decision at a time. If you asked me prior to the accident, I would have told you I was a control freak, 100%. But I realize I control very little.
Yeah.
And so when I decided to have the amputation, I picked the doctor, and then I picked who was going to be my prosthetic company. And I just took it one piece at a time. And so I actually went and interviewed people to be my physical therapist after my amputation. I didn't know who was going to be my physical therapist, and I found an amazing guy to do that in Tifton. And so just taking one decision at a time, because it is so overwhelming, and you just want to be able to focus pros and cons on this, make a good decision, and move on to the next one.
No, that's so wise. I think that is in every area of life, because we all can get overwhelmed no matter who you are. And that's a people experience. So one decision at a time is advice I'm going to take back into my life too. So thanks. What would you say you wish people understood more about those living with limb loss? I know everybody feels misunderstood at some point, but if you could kind of shout it from the rooftops, everybody just understand this.
It just takes more time and more effort. So to shower, to get dressed, to do daily chores, whatever it is, it just takes more time. In fact, my best friend keeps telling me, if I'll mention to her, any struggles I have and that sort of thing. And she's like, Lynda, you just make it look easy. And sometimes we make it look easy and people don't realize it. We had to get up earlier to make this happen. We had to take longer to do this task. If we're going to go on a hike together, it's going to take me more energy than it does you to do the same distance. So it just physically takes a lot more out of us, and usually mentally and emotionally as well. So it just takes more. So sometimes we're drained. Sometimes we can be cranky. We just might get to our ending point a lot quicker than someone else.
That's good. To any other clinics listening, know your patients. It took them a lot to get to that appointment, and how important it is to be ready. What's one thing you learned about yourself through this journey?
One thing I learned was that I had more pride in my heart than I realized. Sometimes it's hard to sit on the other side of accepting the goodness of others.
Yes.
And where I would love to bring you supper, it's hard for me to accept supper from you. And so to sit there for more than 4 years, and to continue to receive the goodness of others and the blessings of others, it was just hard for me, but it was good for me to realize that's just a pride issue on my part, and that I just need to realize I am receiving their blessing and that they are wanting out of the goodness of their heart to share with me. And so I need to receive that and receive that freely, because they wouldn't be there if they didn't want to serve me in some capacity.
That's good. How did you handle the pride? What were some things that you did practically to help navigate that? Give me some advice, Lynda.
I don't know that I did that well.
But you did it.
I did it. But I did. I had, there was a dad and son that came over every Monday night and took my trash out, because I have a long driveway, and they would take it out to the curb, and just things like that over and over. And I would, I don't know. I don't know that I did that well. I practiced it. Yes.
Yeah. No, that's good advice. All right. I want you to imagine pre-amputation Lynda. What would you tell that woman?
That life is going to get better, and life is going to get good again. And I think that knowing that there are brighter days ahead just really would help me out in those dark times so much.
That's beautiful. Lynda, because I know you're an incredible advocate for people, how can our listeners connect with you?
Yes, well, I do have an Instagram, Lynda S. Fisher, and it's Lynda with a Y, and lindasfisher.com. I have a website where I do speaking, and you can sign up for my newsletter. And so I would love to reach out and connect with people.
That's amazing. Thank you for being available. I wanted you to close us in something that I find our clinic, we offer this to any patient who would want it. And most of the time, those facing limb loss do ask for this. Lynda, would you pray us out? Will you pray for a patient who is in the middle of considering amputation or has made the bold decision to no longer have a limb salvage surgery, but to have an amputation instead?
Yes, I'd be honored to.
Yeah.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time. Lord, and I do pray for that person who is in the midst of making a tough decision. I pray that you would just give him or her the wisdom that they need to make the right decision. I ask that you would surround them with people, with community that would lift them up, that would help them in the hard duties of life, in the hard places, and the things that do take more time to do than should. Lord, I pray that you would just let them receive the blessings of others, that you would help them as they make this decision, that they would just make it one at a time, that as they go through life, they wouldn't get overwhelmed, but they would just make the decisions as they come along. Lord, help them and lead them, direct them to the right place for them to find wonderful service from others. And it's in your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Lynda, for that. I am so glad So Everybody Can Move connected us.
I am too. It was great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Were you inspired or challenged today? If so, connect with us. Follow the links in the description box below. We want to hear from you. Until next time, thanks for listening to the Alliance Goal Digger podcast.